I had to produce results, because if I didn't produce results, then people weren't coming back to see me.
Yes.
Because we went from everybody was on diamond platinum tier Blue Cross through the big three to in from 2000 to 2008, where people had insurance, and now they're paying cash out of pocket. And I've always been cash out of pocket.
Yeah, brother. Hello, welcome to the FormABLE Podcast. My name is Jamie Sparling, and I have with me Shawn Kitzman. And today we're going to talk about formable moments in the martial arts, training, as well as all kinds of cool stuff. How is life treating you today, Shawn?
Life is pretty good. My wife and I are getting ready to go to Mexico on Sunday to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary next Wednesday. So, it's just wrapping up some loose ends before we get on a plane on Sunday.
Good. Congratulations, brother. That's huge. You know, you don't always hear a double-digit number nowadays too much. And when you do, it's cool. So you and your wife, God bless, and you must be doing something right, sir.
Yeah, I don't sleep on the couch, so I try to do as much as I possibly can. So
that's the short litmus test, right? Kind of just a little bit.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. If you're not sleeping on the couch, you're not sleeping in the garage, you're probably doing a decent job.
There you go. So, could you tell us a little bit about the RBLD Project, my brother?
Yeah. So the Rebuild Project is a it's the kind of the culmination of the last 33 years of my life.
Wow.
So I tried to train martial arts when I was 16. Always been interested in martial arts. You know, I mean, if you're a kid of the 80s, you either get sucked in by Chuck Norris or Van Damme or Seagal or,
whatever
somewhere
ninja
in
movie
there.
Was there.
Whatever ninja movie. Yep. I'm a little too young for the Bruce Lee craze, right? And then I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. So like we didn't have exposure. Every once in a while when I was a kid, I would see Kung Fu movies like on the old, the UHF channels. But like I didn't get exposed to Bruce Lee until a little bit later in life. And I'll kind of tie that in. So I started training martial arts in 1992. I was going through a local community education karate program that was an offshoot of Ishinryu.
Okay.
And it was really popular in Michigan. And so along with that, I started to get interested in like conditioning and things like that. My dad worked out when I was a kid, and that always interested me. And of course, like again, kid of the 80s, Arnold's going to suck you in there somewhere, and
back
to those martial arts movies.
Muscle and Fitness or Black Belt, two different magazines.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I have behind me is my garage. And in my garage, I have a pile of Flex magazines from the late 90s, mid to late 90s. So I started training karate. I started training for self-defense reasons. And I had a younger brother, and we were pretty rough and tumble kids, latchkey kids. So my brother and I had to figure out disputes with each other quite often. And so I grew a little disenfranchised, and I started to look around the room, and I went, I'm here for self-defense, and I don't know that very many of you guys can beat me up, right? And so, because it was a kids program, and there was some adults in it, but it was mainly a kids program. So I started poking around into books and going to, Barnes and Noble and Borders. And I'm blessed to be from Michigan. So Michigan was where Borders Books was headquartered, and it was in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I spent a ton of time in bookstores, from the age of 17 on. And then I started to look into this. I started to research a little bit of this Bruce Lee guy. Heard about him, My senior year of high school, I competitively powerlifted. My brother, who was younger than me, was playing football. And the powerlifting coach saw him, and he goes, hey, you should come lift with us. And it was kind of a little bit of my job to take care of my brother. So I was like, well, you're doing this thing. I'm going to go check it out. And I walked in, and I watched one practice, and I went, oh, this is for me. I want to do this. This is really cool. And so that was a Tuesday. I think I had my physical by Thursday and I was lifting by Friday. And so that lifting thing was a really interesting thing because I wasn't a very like big kid. When I started lifting, I was 136 pounds. So weight classes were, I don't know what was under 132 for boys, but 132, 148, 165, 181, 198, 220 heavyweight. So I was 136, and the kid that was on my team was in 132, and he was the national champ. So I could probably leave that weight class. So then I wound up, through just lifting, I wound up bulking up, if you will, to 148. But that started to put a lot of my athletic, the things I had in my head. I know I could do this, but for some odd reason I can't. And getting stronger was a really big proponent of me, like starting to realize some of my athleticism. So, because like all of a sudden, my senior year of high school, I was relatively athletic, but then like people were like, holy, where'd Kitzman come from? Like, what happened? And it was really from lifting. And then, you know, I hit a little bit of a growth spurt, but it was really from lifting. And so I graduated high school in 94, summer of 94, we're at a powerhouse and this guy walks up to us and he starts asking us about powerlifting stuff. And he said he trained martial arts. And I said, oh, you do? That's cool. Well, I train martial arts too. And I said, what do you do? And he said, Jeet Kune Do and Filipino martial arts. And again, for all of the whippersnappers that might watch this, you got to remember, 94, the internet is just beginning.
Yes.
I remember going to my friend's house who later on went to actually getting into the gaming industry, computer games. I remember going to his house and him showing me like a modem, right? And Doom, or maybe it was Wolfenstein, one of those two, right? He's like, look, and he picks the phone up and he puts it on the thing, and he's like, I can play with people from all over the world. I'm like, whatever, dude, I don't care, you know.
That was the time of the phone book when you wanted to look for a martial arts
I was
school.
just going to say that. Man. That was the time of the phone book, right? And if you didn't have the next county is over phone book, you were kind of screwed, right? So that will come into that's important in a little bit later on down the road in the story.
Gotcha, brother.
So I met this guy, John Noonan. I think he still teaches in Fowlerville, Michigan. I started training with him. He was doing Jeet Kune Do and Filipino martial arts, and he had bought a ton of Paul Vunek VHS tapes. So my first introduction to Jeet Kune Do and Filipino martial arts was PFS, or Progressive Fighting Systems. That was the first thing. And I remember watching Paul and going like, oh my God, I don't know about this, right? Like the headbutt instantly, I was like, oh, that's pretty serious.
Looks like it's going to hurt.
Yep. Yeah. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to figure out that an elbow or a headbutt is going to hurt a lot, right?
Exactly.
So I started training with him. And in the spring of 95, he calls me up one day. He goes, hey, we're going to go. And I've heard about this guy, Dave Hatch, that he had trained off and on with. But Dave Hatch lived in the next county over. And so there's no way I could have heard about him unless I looked in the back of a Black Belt magazine and rummaged through the listings for martial arts schools. So he said, we're going to go over to this guy, Dave Hatch's house, and we're going to go take a private from him. And I said, okay. Because I'd heard about this guy and I'd seen a little bit of video of him. But I didn't know anything about him.
Sure.
And so we go to Dave's house, who later on became my instructor in my Sifu. So we go to Sifu Dave's house and we go downstairs in the basement because he teaches out of his basement to this day. And all of a sudden I start watching him and I'm like, oh my God,
this is it.
I don't know what this guy's doing, but it sure in the hell isn't what we're doing. Right. And so I'm 19. I just want to learn. Right. We start going over there a little bit to train with him. That later on that fall, I start going over there and like become a student of Sifu Dave's. And so I've known him for 30 years this year. So that was my introduction to like, and it was like the internet for martial arts, basically.
Yeah.
Because now I get opened up into this world. So Sifu's a full instructor under Guru Dan in both Filipino martial arts, in Jeet Kune Do, or Gunfan Jeet Kune Do. He's a black sash under Sifu Francis. He's an Ajahn under Master Chai or Ajahn Chai. We train with Hermes Wanda. I mean, like we were talking about yesterday before the call, like it opened up a world to me that I don't know that I ever would have had the opportunity to have if I had not met him. Mm-hmm. Because just proximity and there was very few people in Michigan doing that at the time. In 97, I went to massage school. And part of that, so I had an uncle, he's passed, but I had an uncle who was very eccentric, very cool guy, lived in Connecticut. And every summer he would come to Michigan with his family and he'd talk to me about things, right? Mm-hmm. So he talked to me about like rolfing or really deep tissue massage, like in the late 80s, because it helped him play handball, mountain bike, hike, do all the things that he wanted to do. He talked to me about yoga. He talked to me about Tai Chi. He actually introduced me, before I knew who, let me see if this is correct. But right around the same time that I started training martial art, Jeet Kune Do, he introduced me to Krishnamurti. So like, he was just this really interesting guy. And eclectic kind of guy, maybe. Yeah, eclectic, 100% eclectic. So between Uncle Jim, my mom thought that I should go to college and become a physical therapist and work with young athletes. Mm-hmm. Later on, that wound up to be kind of a little bit of seeing into the future because I didn't go to college, but I worked with a ton of youth. Yeah, I worked with a ton of youth athletes. But also Guru Dan was at a seminar in Michigan, and he was talking about, if you really want to be a complete martial artist, you should really look into the healing arts. And I was already going down that path. And so I decided at the infinite wisdom of, I don't know, 20 or 21, that if I ever got crabby at my job, I was going to go to massage school.
Wow.
And I think it was no, oh yeah. So this would be 96. Mm-hmm. No, I'm sorry. This would be 97. This would be the spring of 97. Because 6 months later I was in massage school. Because I got crabby at my job. I went to massage school, and then I started working in 2000. And then in 2003, my ex-business partner and I opened up a practice. 2008, I opened up my own practice. Mm-hmm. And then from 2008 to 2015, I lived in Michigan, and we moved in. 2016, I lived in Michigan, had my practice. 2016, we moved to Minneapolis. My wife is a nurse practitioner, nurse midwife, and she got a job offer we couldn't turn down here in Minneapolis. And so to circle all the way back around to Rebuild Project, which was the first thing that you asked me, which it all ties together. The Rebuild Project
with
is
origin story because this is
no.
Shawn.
Yep, yeah. It's okay. It's okay. So the Rebuild Project is I'm the founder of it. There's a little bit of my own personal story in there as well with some of the methodology. But it is we help high achieving people over 40 build a resilient body so they can kick Father Time's ass.
Yeah.
And so my inspiration from that in martial arts, mm-hmm. Obviously is Guru Dan, because he's still doing it. In Minnesota here, I train jiu-jitsu. I have the great pleasure to train jiu-jitsu under Coach Greg Nelson. And of course, probably most of your people know Coach's story, but Coach is a two-time stage 4 cancer survivor, and still on the mat, still giving guys 30 years younger than him hell. And then also Sifu Dave and Simo Linda Hatch, who are, Sifu's, I think he just turned 75, I think. but he's in his mid 70s now. Simo's probably in her early 70s, and I mean,
Amazing.
you wouldn't know it unless you knew, you know?
Yes, sir.
And so I have really good examples of what martial arts can do, right? And still let you train at a level that is entertaining and engaging and fun enough for you, and also how it keeps you young, you know? So what we do with the Rebuild Project is we do, I hate to use the word personal training or conditioning because we're not a fitness company, we're a transformation company. I help people recover from injuries and then build a program for them over the next 3 to 5 years where we make them a mutant compared to their former self. So wherever you start right now in 3 to 5 years, I will make whoever you are in 3 to 5 years will absolutely murder and maul the person you are right now physically. So
at any age.
At any age. Yeah.
Okay, that's important.
Age.
That's important. Most of us,
Yep.
that sometimes we think Father Time's already tapped us out, right? That's easy to think.
Yeah. I'm going to be 50 in February.
Brother, I just turned 50.
So 50 is hitting me weird because I don't feel old, right? My body, I mean, do I have as much energy as I did when I was 20? No.
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I as athletic as I was at 20? No, definitely not. Standing still, I'm 5'10". Standing still, I could jump and grab rim, right? On a 10-foot rim. I don't know that I could do that on 9 foot now. But like I'm still able to get on the mat 3 days a week and train jiu-jitsu. And we train, we're kind of like we're ahead of the curve a little bit because we brought in the coaching team at the gym brought in ecological dynamics into our jiu-jitsu practice about 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So for the last 3 years, we've done nothing but train ecological dynamics. So we don't drill any longer. It is all task-based games or situational sparring. So I'm not doing a 45-minute drilling class plus 15 minutes of crazy people rolling. It's probably 45 minutes, probably closer to 50 minutes of just drill, live drilling, or constraint-based games. So, but in kind of how the whole Rebuild Project happened was, there had been something that was kind of boiling around in my head from as early as like 22. I wanted to find a program that helped me with strength and what I thought at the time was flexibility, but now I know as mobility.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So flexibility is just, do you have the ability to do this thing? Mobility is I have the ability to do the thing, but I have the strength to support my body in it.
Yes.
Right. So you'll see people that are really flexible, but their joints just kind of dump into the capsule, or they're, like they've got really hypermobile elbows. They don't have a hard stop there. And so it's hard on their joints. That's flexibility or hypermobility,
Okay.
But mobility is having the strength in the joint, in the muscle tissue, in the tendons and ligaments, and the joint capacity to handle long range loads,
like supporting staff. Which is really a lot of times when we look at in the 80s when we looked at those magazines, it was bodybuilding. It was one thing for a look, right? And then that was considered health. Yeah.
And then what we did is we went in the inverse place and we thought yoga was healthy, right? But
Extremes.
very few bodybuilders were flexible, and I have yet to find a yoga person that's actually strong.
Wow.
Right? I mean, actually strong. And strength is a relative.
Athletic standards.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So bring a yoga person into jiu-jitsu and we'll see what happens. Like you're just not going to be like, you just don't have that type of strength, right? Now, I'm sure I've pissed off like 400 yoga people, but it's okay.
It's the internet. Come on. Seriously.
Yeah,
if we don't piss off at least 399, no one will watch.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we're only 18 minutes into this. I've got a lot more people to piss off here in the future. So,
excellent. Yeah.
Yep. So, in 2013, I tore my left meniscus, and I don't really know still how I did it. I was trained in jiu-jitsu. But the training partner that I had was lighter than I was. We weren't going hard. Like I just woke up the next day and my knee looked like, this.
Yeah.
And that I had a bucket handle tear. And like it healed pretty decently. In 19, after I got my purple belt, I have a good friend of mine in Michigan, Ken Blackburn, who's one of the best kettlebell sport coaches in the world. Ken has been all over the world to teach kettlebell seminars. And after I got my purple belt, he trains jiu-jitsu as well. He called me up and he's like, hey, well, what do you think now that you got your purple? How do you feel? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, honestly, I don't really feel much different than I did the day before. But from purple to brown, I've got to get in better shape. I mean, I just got to get in better shape because if I'm going to hang with these guys at the gym, I've got to train. I've got to be able to withstand the training. And so he's like, I had done kettlebells in the past. He's like, well, why don't we do this? Why don't you just go home and snatch a 12K bell for 5 minutes and tell me how many reps you get. And so then for about the next 2 years, I went down this kettlebell sport kind of rabbit hole with him. And it was great, but I learned that you can't try to be good at two things at one time that are physically demanding. And so I started overtraining, and I started to notice some overtraining signs, and I knew some of those signs from my powerlifting days as well. But I think I overtrained my body into eventually a right meniscus tear. And that one was so bad that by the time that happened in 19, in the summer of 21, my shin would float around when I was doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, brother.
Right. So when I was trying to do like a hook sweep or a butterfly sweep, I couldn't load my right leg. And that's the side that I swept to most of the time because the top of my shin, as it hits my knee, would move. It would just float around. It was gross. It felt terrible.
Painful? Was it painful or just gross?
It was painful the next day.
Okay.
It didn't hurt. Yeah, it didn't hurt. I would have swelling. And also, like, I'd been doing body work and rehab stuff for a long time. I knew that was not supposed to happen.
Oh, for sure. I'm asking for myself.
Yeah,
honestly, I got a bad right knee. Anyway, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. So, but like a dumb athlete, I was still training, right?
Or a focused martial artist, depending on how you want to look at it, right?
Yeah, I'll say dumb athlete because that's what I was.
Yes, sir.
Because I knew better. I knew better, right?
Word.
I knew better. But I wasn't going to stop training because I love training. So through one of the baseball pitchers that I worked with, he had turned me on to this knees over toes guy. And I had seen some of his stuff floating around on Instagram during COVID. And I'm like, dude, I am staying away from that clickbait bullshit. I've seen enough of it. I don't want to hear anything about it. But I was like, it was either try some of that guy's stuff or go under the knife. I mean, those were my two options because I'd already been to my primary care and we'd done an MRI and he's like, look, you got a moderate bucket handle tear. We could do some physical therapy. I knew I didn't necessarily want to do physical therapy because people don't understand, I'm going to go do jiu-jitsu. Well, no, you're not supposed to do that. I'm still going to go do it. Right.
I need a physical therapist that understands how it's going to play out. Right. And that's also why people have come to see me for 25 years in my practice. I would imagine.
Is because I understand you're going to go do the thing, right? And so my job is to put you back together again while you're still going to do the thing, right? So I started this knees over toes guy thing. I just started walking backwards on a turned off treadmill I worked my way up to 10 minutes. And I was amazed at how much more stable my knees started to get by this dumb thing, right? And that was like in the early summer of 21.
Mm-hmm.
And by the fall, October of 22, right around this time, actually, I was like, I'm just going to go, I'm going to try out his program for 90 days and let's see what happens. And I was amazed at what happened in 90 days. For the last 4 years, it's been my primary source of the way that I take care of injuries with my body. And then also keep myself healthy on the mat, get a little stronger, gain about 20 pounds of muscle on accident, not on purpose. I wasn't trying to do that on purpose. So the Rebuild Project is kind of a culmination of all those things. And the genesis for it is looking around the room at people in my age group and going, I don't see a lot of kick-ass 50-year-olds. And if you're not going to be if you're not a kick-ass 50-year-old, it's going to be tough for you to be a kick-ass 70-year-old.
Wow.
Right?
Keep it real, Shawn.
Seriously, though.
Yeah, no,
I mean, look at
yeah.
You know, I mean, look at the people again. Drew Dan was impressive at 50.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept going through a lot of injuries, by the way, like a lot of injuries.
Yes.
If you talk to Drew Dan at all about it, if you listen to a story at all, a lot of injuries. Steve Dave took his Muay Thai apprentice test under Ajahn Chai at 49.
Oh.
He was the oldest person at the time to do so. So he was definitely a kick-ass 49-year-old.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yep.
And, you know, I mean, Coach Greg is Coach Greg, you know? So, but I look around the room and I go, and in business, because I'm in I'm part of like a lot of business networking groups,
mm-hmm.
you know? And I look around the room and I go, gosh, man, what's happening? But what I realized is that it's not that people don't want to do it. They don't have someone that can handle the things that they have going on. So typically an injury coming in, and they start to try and get back on the road to feeling better and getting healthier. And then all of a sudden the injury creeps up again and it sets them back. And then they're in this cycle. Also, they may not have someone that really understands. You know, you go to a gym, you don't find many 50-year-old trainers,
mm-hmm.
right? They're all 25-year-old trainers. The way that your body responds to things at 25 or 30 is way different than at 45 or 50. And I'm not saying that they can't learn how to how to work with aging.
For sure. That's not what I hear. What I hear is that you kind of been through it, and this is like a culmination of a life's work.
Yep. Yeah. So what happens oftentimes is they go to the gym, they want to get healthy, they go hire a personal trainer, and they get blown up, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're sore all the time. The programming is unsustainable for them. And then so there's just this cycle of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand it. I've had 2 meniscus tears on both. I've had a meniscus tear in both knees. I've had separated shoulders. I had back pain in my late 20s all the way into my early 40s. That was terrible. I've had, neck, trained martial arts, trained jiu-jitsu long enough in Muay Thai, you're going to have neck problems. Like I've had all those things, right?
Whether you train hard or light, you end up with the bangs and dings of just being on the road, you know?
Yeah. And if you're going to be active, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you're going to, as you start to feel better, you're going to test your mettle. And as you test your mettle, you're going to bump up against your body saying, hey, we're just not ready for that.
Yeah. And
that's what a repetitive use injury is, right?
Mm-hmm.
A repetitive use injury is, hey, we're just not ready for that.
Makes sense.
That's what your brain is telling.
I was talking to someone once who had some knee pain and some hip pain, and they had went to a high-level physical therapist, and that person was like, well, yeah, that happens with martial artists all the time. And because the supporting muscles weren't necessarily there. Right. And I remember hearing it at the time going, that's horrible, but it makes total sense. And
sure.
To this guy, I go on the opposite extreme and I start doing yoga because I think that that's going to fix the deficits and it feels like, right, it fixes some of them, but the movement plane is different, right?
Yeah. It's also the progressive load.
Okay.
So now I did yoga very seriously for a year and a half when I was from 2007 to 2008. Very serious, like 2 to 3 times a week, plus a daily practice. And my back pain didn't get much better because what my problem was is I had a strength deficit. And what most people's problem is they have a strength deficit. If you sit down and talk to a yoga instructor that's been around for a second, they're going to tell you something like that. And the reason that it gets better is because people will get better. And I'm not saying that people don't get better through yoga.
That's not what I'm hearing. That's not what I'm hearing at all.
No. But what I'm saying is that there's a load. The reason that you're getting better is because you're loading tissue and you're creating adaptations in the muscle tissue, in the ligament, and in your nervous system. But if you don't get better, the reason for that is that you either have a hardware issue that is far beyond and you might need a surgical intervention, right? Or the movements that you're doing they're not loading your soft tissue enough so that it creates stability in the tendons, ligaments, and muscle tissue. And that's what creates the stability overall, right? So
can I ask a question?
Yeah. Yep, sure can.
In the yoga teacher training I went through, they talked about the body having natural release valves. So many times we're not doing necessarily the posture correctly because now we're trying to talk about engaging certain things.
Yep.
That's a piece of what I hear with what you're talking about in such a way is that our body creates maybe adaptations or release valves based on our movement.
Yeah, and so we want to start to think about, so we'll take the hip, we'll take a triangle pose.
Okay.
Right? So when you're in a triangle pose, your foot is usually pointing your back foot is pointing this way, your front foot is pointing this way, right? And then what you're supposed to be doing as you start to get into that pose more, you're supposed to be opening up your hip capsule, right? You're supposed to be opening up the hip capsule in the back leg, and then your other hip capsule is really supposed to be almost kind of sucking into the socket on the front leg, right? Okay. But if you don't have the strength to do that, you're not going to do that. And so
there you go, speaking the truth again, Shawn.
Right. So that's now, and I'm not saying that through yoga you might not be able to develop that strength, but at some point in time, you can only hold the pose for 552 hours. And you have to ask yourself, is there a more efficient way to do this? And that's where external load comes into play. Because external load is going to force the adaptation that you're looking to have happen. Or let me put it a kinder, gentler way. It's going to encourage the adaptation that you need to have happen. So classically for men, the tough parts for yoga are forward folds and anything that that brings the adductors into play or the groin muscles. And a lot of the reason for that is because the load of the body isn't sufficient enough to get you past the basic strength that men typically have in those two places. So you need some of that external load to force the adaptation in the tissue and then also in the nervous system as well. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of explaining what I do with RBLD Project. Is we put Humpty Dumpty back together again with all the king's horses and all the king's men, right? With short range motions that are more rehab-ish and longer range motions that are meant to increase the mobility and then the end range that someone has. But because we're doing it progressively under external load, and we're allowing the adaptation to happen in the tissue and in the sometimes in the hardware as well, what happens then is that you're able to be strong at those long ranges. You had a question. I'm sorry, I interrupted it.
Don't ever be sorry. That was great. If you are watching the podcast, leave us a comment on Shawn not being long-winded. I felt you were breaking it down like Barney for this guy because you were kind enough to listen to my example of I thought how I was following you a little bit, and a lot of it, if it was long-winded, it was all for me. I got something out of it, and I sincerely appreciate that. One thing about you I notice in your story is development of a lot of relationships along the way, as well as mentors, and being open to mentorship, which is different at different times for every human being, Tell me about some of the relationships that you formed in martial arts.
Well, I have a couple relationships that are really super, that I carry through to this day, that are super important to me. So my powerlifting coach, Jim Goodrich, or Mr. G as I call him, he was a teacher at the high school that I was at. And I have maintained that relationship from 1994 to present day. He was one of the first people outside of my parents and my grandfather who saw potential in me and invested in that potential.
Yeah.
And Mr. G, and he also, God, he knew how to push my buttons in the weight room. Holy shit. He was so good at it. Oh my gosh. So Mr. G was the first one. I don't know. He's just been one of those guys.
He lit a
fire. And then Super Dave and Simo Linda. I met them in 95. So I told you this yesterday. When my wife and I got married in 2010, we had 65 people on our guest list. Mr. G, Sifu Dave, Simo Linda were three of those people on our guest list. On my list, you didn't get on my list unless you were important to me. And so there was cousins that didn't get on my list.
Sure.
Right.
I understand.
But those people were super important, and are super important to me. Again, with Sifu Dave, he's seen me, both of those people, all three of those people have seen me through, other than, birth to 17 or birth to 19, they've seen me through every stage of my adult life.
Yeah.
Right. And said, hey, we still want to hang out with you on occasion. Right. And maintain close relationships. Our Gabe, our son, graduated from high school last 2024. And those three people were at his graduation party when we went back home to Michigan. I think it's important to take on mentee roles and study with people who have very deep knowledges of subjects that you're interested in, and then create a form that relationship around that. I don't talk about Sifu. In my house, he's called Sifu Dave.
Yeah.
Right. I never call him Dave. I never call Simo Linda. They're my Sifu and Simo. And that's quite literally what they are. Right. And so now with Coach Greg's a lot less informal. And so, outside of the gym, I would probably call Coach Greg. But I don't. But I would do it and not feel bad about it. I just do it out of the formality of it.
Yeah.
But so yeah, those are all super important things that I think that you can gain a lot from those relationships. And in my early 20s, I was really kind of in my late teens too. I was searching for some structure. I was searching for an ability to have, again, relationships with people that were outside of my knowledge base, and they just happened to be in that thing. And to this day, I still have relationships with them.
That's so cool. I've seen Sifu Dave and Simo Linda at numerous events over the years. Folks have brought up how I should have Sifu Dave, two people brought up I should have him on the podcast. And
You should.
when I
We
asked
talked about
you,
that yesterday.
yeah, when I asked you yesterday about your martial arts journey, you had literally immediately there was a change in your voice and demeanor, and it was I didn't know you had trained with Mr. Hatch. I think I said, and you were like,
Sure. Yeah.
wait for it, Sifu Dave. And then you talked a little bit about your background, so I could tell at that moment that was one of those, you and I have a friend in common, Mr. Andy Tunstall. He went to high school with me, and I was kind of like the chunky, funny kid, you know what I mean? And he was the first person to show me a little martial arts and then encourage me a little bit, and take me to the gym and do different things. And, as a matter of fact, I said yesterday I would show you.
Oh, this. That's crazy, dude. That's a great knife, by the way. How did that damn guy get to be so freaking talented? Like, he has so many, I've known him since 2014, I think. And I've never heard anything about him carving knives and stuff, he's such a smart, talented dude.
He really is. His grandfather was like a surrogate pops to him and a lot of us in the in high school and stuff. They used to tell me that I could go there and spend the night, and if they woke up and I was there, they knew that was the best place for me.
Sure.
And so that was just like one of those things, But Andy was always that way. He really always had this shine about him, or at least I thought so, And that leads me to want to ask you, I also have always searched for mentors, and many times I wasn't necessarily sure I was even looking for mentors. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I wasn't. Also, by the way, when I started powerlifting and met Mr. G, I knew who Mr. G was, but I didn't think that it would be a relationship that I carried on for 30 years, 35 years, and when I met Sifu and Simo, I had an inkling that I want to hang around with these people more because I want to be more like these people than I am now. Right. So I could see I wanted to act and behave the way that they did, whatever that meant for me. And I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are, So I agree with you. I wasn't aware that I was looking for mentorship. I just knew that these people had more experience and more knowledge than I did, and they were willing to share it.
Yeah.
And if I put in just a little bit of work, right, then I could reciprocate that. I could reciprocate, and then it became a little bit of the foundation of the relationship.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, and to hear that, because for me, I always thought this head only listens to certain people.
Yeah.
Well, to a certain degree, and I know that of myself to be true, but maybe there's another piece that goes along with that, because the whole time I wasn't.
Talk to people who know me closely. They will tell you about the Shawn smell test. Right?
You tell me.
If you don't pass the Shawn smell test, I am out.
Right.
I have zero interest. Yeah, I have zero interest. So, it's just one of those things, also to be fair, that has also come around to bite me in the ass at times too. So,
I'm too much. I'm too much the other way, and that bites too.
Yeah,
that bites too.
Yeah, had I looked at knees over toes guy stuff sooner, I could have probably got my knee better quicker, right? But I didn't.
Yeah.
So, but as one of my old managers used to say, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd have a Merry Christmas.
My
right?
man. Yes, sir.
So, but yeah, I think that there's, but as I've gotten along in life and aged more, the smell test is really like, does what you say hold up? Does it stand? Does it pass? Does it pass? Does it hold water?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it is. Like, does it work? So like for me in my work and what I do with people, like people are coming to me and oftentimes they're at their last leg essentially. And they're, I don't want to say desperate, but they're really hoping that I can help them out, because oftentimes they've been to see lots of people and gotten very little results.
Sometimes desperation and willingness are like third cousins though too.
Yeah, for sure. And so, and then also having my practice in Michigan, in Metro Detroit, a very blue collar community.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was a massage therapist in my early 20s. I had to produce results, because if I didn't produce results, then people weren't coming back to see me.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we went from everybody was on, diamond platinum tier, Blue Cross through the big three, to from 2000 to 2008, where people had shit insurance, and now they're paying cash out of pocket. And I've always been cash out of pocket.
Yeah, brother.
And so what happens with that is now, and then also, the rest of the world or the rest of the countries, they're dealing with this mortgage crisis thing going on. Well, not only are we dealing with mortgage crisis, but two of the three major economy drivers in our state go bankrupt. And Ford almost goes bankrupt. They're that close to going bankrupt. And so people are losing jobs. They're being forced to relocate out of state, all these things. So, 2007, 2008, or actually 2006, 2007, 2008, all the way to 2012, it was pretty lean. Mm-hmm. So I had to provide outcomes for people. Like, there had to be a reason that people were coming to pay me money out of their pocket. And along the way, I'm not cheap. Right. So, I have very high standards for what I do. And so
you provide value.
Yes. I'm not cheap by value. Like, if you come work with me, you can go find cheaper people for sure. I don't know that you're going to find better people, but you can go find cheaper people. 100%.
Amen, brother.
And so, but that also means that I have to be on top of my game. Right. And so that's just the smell test, does what you say work? Does it hold water? Does it provide the outcomes that you say it's going to provide them? And then in a time that isn't, we're waiting for 150 years for something to change.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. That's a good way to put it. Ecological jiu-jitsu, do you have a few minutes to talk about ecological jiu-jitsu games?
Yeah.
I did not catch that yesterday, but fascinating.
And
sometimes in the midst of it, with my children's program, to get them to get something, I'm just drawing from whatever art or whatever thing I give them an attribute, right?
Yep.
And then try to put it in a game format. And if I can do that, I find that they learn faster.
So an interesting thing with this, and here's what we'll tie Bunak back into this.
Oh, cool.
So the reason I initially liked Paul, because it was at the time, and again, I started training martial arts for self-defense. Mm-hmm. Later on in my life, I truly now believe self-defense is being a kick-ass 70-year-old. And what I mean by a kick-ass 70-year-old is, if you fall, you can get up off the ground. If you fall, you have the bone density that you're not going to break your hip. If you can go be active with your spouse, your grandkids, your nieces and nephews, with people far younger than you. Like that to me is self-defense.
My man.
When I was young, it was about kicking ass, right?
For sure.
But then, like if you're not going out and doing dumb shit, your self-defense skills, they don't really come into play very often, right? Or self-defense is training martial arts so that you have a community of people around you that give a shit about you.
Oh,
right.
Yes, sir.
That's self-defense, because that community is part of your mental, emotional health, right? And so, but anyways, back to Vunak. So Vunak, when I first saw Paul, I went, oh, that's interesting. And the idea to put boxing gloves on and have someone try to jab you and slip and do the things that he was doing at the time. And then, with the stick or the knife or the blade, Paul's big thing is defang the snake, and keep at long range, right? It's funny, watching people today respond in comments to Paul's videos are really funny to me, because oftentimes they get taken out of context.
Always.
And now, to be fair, not that there's times that, Paul hasn't done things that you could take in context. Right?
For sure. Most of us have had some contextual lapses at some time.
Yeah, so. But training methodology, especially when he talks about live training, those types of things is really just ecological dynamics. They're constraint-based training. So, and I've dipped my toes enough into the water so that I can be sound kind of like I know what I'm doing and when I describe it, but also not get down. I can't get down too far into the weeds of the thing. But here's my understanding of the ecological dynamics.
Your understanding is just perfect, Shawn. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So a game let's just do jiu-jitsu, right?
Okay, yeah.
Or Bruce Lee was doing ecological dynamics, because what he would do is say, hey, look, I'm going to take away, you can only throw a cross and a round kick, and your partner now can go do whatever they want to do, right? Mm-hmm. And now your partner only has a jab and you only have a cross. Like, that's ecological dynamics. That's a constraint-based game, right? And so, but when you start to do that constraint-based training, what winds up happening is you self-organize differently, because now you only have certain ways to do the thing. And then, of course, you have to put it back together again in a full context game, right? So, you're not going to have someone spar with just a cross for 500 hours, never actually spar full contact in full context, and then say, go win, the WBO championship. Like, that would be asinine, right?
But he's going to get better at delivering that cross at range, distance, in real time.
Yep, 100%. So in jiu-jitsu, like for stand-up, oftentimes what we'll do is a game like, I'm going to get, it's a side where we both have the same reset or win task. So I'm going to try and get an underhook. I'm going to try and get what is basically called T position. I'm going to try and get an underhook. I'm going to try and get to the far wrist and have my head in close. And I'm going to hold that position for 3 seconds. Then I'm going to count it. 1, 2, 3. Now, if I get the underhook and I don't get the wrist and you snake your arm out, there's no reset, right? And so that's a continuous game. But it also goes to a point where what you want to try and drive people to do is you want to try and drive people, especially in the beginning, towards the highest percentage things, right? So like when you go back to progressive fighting systems, Paul took progressive fighting systems because he knew that headbutts, knees, and elbows were tools that you don't have to train a ton. Yeah. Right? And that you can basically teach anybody how to headbutt, knee, and elbow. You can teach anybody how to knee and elbow and make them far more potent with a knee or an elbow with far less damage to their own body than if I was to teach you kickboxing, right? So, we're trying to drive to lowest common denominators that don't lose the efficiency and the effectiveness.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, back to that underhook position, judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, any grappling art, you see that position in Muay Thai. Anytime that you're allowed to clinch, essentially, that comes together. You see that position in all combat sports.
I'm going to loosely call it some type of frame. Is that?
Yep, 100%. Okay. Yeah. But now, the next game might be, I'm going to try and get chest to chest, double unders, body lock, right? If I can get to the body lock and hold it for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, or 5 seconds, or 10 seconds, or a million seconds, it doesn't matter, right? Because the counting is also, for me, like, because sometimes what will happen when people are starting to learn to do stuff is they go in and they try and get that tie-out position, and the other person lets that happen almost. They kind of give up, right? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to progressively teach live resistance so that you can train it and drill it safely, but you don't lose the effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
So, or, the next game could be you're trying to get your partner's back, right? And then you could say, you're trying to get your partner's back, or you're trying to put their hands, or you're trying to put their hands on the ground, or you're trying to put their hands on the ground and their hips on the ground. I don't care how you get there. That's what we're trying to do. Now, if that's a struggle, then what we could do is we could go back to, you have a body lock. You're trying to put your partner's hands on the ground. You're trying to put your partner's hips on the ground. You're trying to get to the back, or you have a single leg. Like you can change the variability of the constraint, so that it mimics live enough responses, and we can get enough reps in there.
Yeah. Now, do these games fit together? Meaning, so I'm trying to do A, and this person are they just trying to not let me do A, or do they have a game that's assigned for a specific activity for them? Yeah,
so you could have, we both have the same game, where we're just trying to do that thing, right? And the reset is this. We could have a game where I have a reset and you don't, so it's a continuous drill. Like in theory, Numerato would be kind of like that.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So Numerato is a drill of me. I was just watching, I think it was Dwight the other day, and he had a really good explanation of Numerato. You're just trying to get to the back, right? And so Numerato is, you're really trying to stay outside of the limbs of your partner, right? Sometimes you have to crash through the middle, but we know that going through the middle with weapons is kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Right. So how can I stay on the outside? So Numerato would be a drill where there's, in theory, right?
I'm following.
Where there's no, that's an example of something where there's no reset for one person and there's a reset for another.
Yes.
So like,
a feeder and.
Yeah. But
Not
it
so
also
much.
gets because like feeder, like that when that starts to come into it, then all of a sudden you kind of lose some of that aliveness to it.
Yes. So that fits like in the Kali with a BC Dario, which is ABCs. And now we're working up to resistance. Okay, I'm following.
Yeah. So like a lot of times what I'll do is from standing versus seated in jiu-jitsu. My goal when you're seated, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding seated guard versus supine guard, right? And you have a lot more options if you're seated than you do supine. Supine, you wind up giving up a lot. You give up height, right? Essentially, you give up real estate. So it's harder to wrestle up there. It's harder to sweep there, especially versus someone that's standing, right? When you're seated, it's much easier to wrestle up. It's much easier to sweep someone. it's much easier to put them in a defensive cycle. And I'm not saying that there's not great supine players out there.
I'm
blah, blah, blah,
following
blah,
you.
blah. Right?
Context.
Yep. So the standing guy, your job is to maybe in the beginning push your partner flat.
Mm-hmm.
If I can push my partner flat, then we would switch positions. Seated guy, your job is to not let him put you flat. So now I set a timer for 3 minutes, and bro, if you can be on bottom and sit for 3 minutes and not let that guy push you, you're getting a lot better.
Yes.
Right? And also the guy on top is trying to put you flat.
Mm-hmm.
And then another context could be, okay, I want you to put him flat, but I also want you to get around the legs so that your foot is in his hip, right? So now we have two things that you need to do. You need to get your partner flat, and then you need to get and then inevitably you have to throw in there, you can get to the back because gamification will happen eventually. And but those are contexts of drills that you would do or games that you would play with tasks that mimic what you learn or mimic what happens to you in a live role.
Yeah. That sounds like pieces of the pie for like a recipe, right?
Yeah.
And concentrating on quality ingredients,
yep.
Right? As opposed to, I don't know, just throwing it together or something like that. And also, seems to be getting really popular right now, and people have different opinions. The word game, you kept using it, right? That word, you keep using it. But
right.
It made a lot of sense for me all of a sudden because I have students that are struggling to develop their game. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, they don't know what to do. So they'll ask somebody else. And I told last night, I had a conversation. I was like, I'm really not sure you need another technique.
Right.
I don't know. And it's hard to tell somebody who loves martial arts and all that I don't know, for me, I hit a point where I definitely did not need another technique. I needed to glue it together and find something, right? Or fix the holes or whatever it was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so in the way that information has spread, let's say in the last 150 to 200 years, mm-hmm. knowledge from a tome or a book at one point in time was invaluable because there was no other way for you to get that knowledge. And so this repetitious learning is something that that was inherent to the way that we learned things. What happened though is we got into this, I need more and more information. And as more and more information becomes available to you, then the lure or the allure is, oh man, that next one thing. And I've been guilty of this. Everybody's done it. Here's the way that I explain it to people. You don't get better if you don't show up. You don't get better if you don't put in consistent effort. And the time that you have that epiphany or breakthrough, that's not because of the class that you were in. That's because of the time that you spent before this. And people go, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go put 405 on the bar, and I'm going to ask you to deadlift it one time. And then when you fail, we'll just come back again when you have the epiphany, but you put in no more work. And let's see what happens. The bar's not going to move off the floor. But if you show up consistently and you put in the effort, moving 405 is quite very possible, right? But the day that you move 405, it's not because you showed up to the gym that day. The day that you move 405 is because you showed up 150,000 times before that. And so that one extra technique. Now, and I'm not saying that there's not like you're training and let's say someone explains something to you or you drill a technique a little bit just to get the little finer details. And sometimes the technique does matter for sure, but the application of the technique is rarely in drilling that technique 50,000 times. The application of the technique is because you've been able to answer the live resisting question your partner's put in front of you.
Amen, brother. Back to the Kitzman smell test. That was awesome to watch and to listen to, and it makes a lot of sense. And all I know is my own experience when I hit those plateaus, and literally thinking, I think there's another mentor, or I think that there's something. I think there's something, right? And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and meanwhile, no, it's kind of the glue. That's been a big piece of how I'm trying to, how we're developing our AIM program, is to mix the arts based on root movements. Just root movements, and also give a historical piece and all the cultural pieces. But let's talk about where they fit together, rather than why it needs to be stripped down individually, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. So when I had my school in Michigan, and I was still doing all of the stand-up things, right? Striking, Pali or Filipino martial arts, all those things. It was one of the things that I really liked that Paul did. He talked about self-preservation and self-perfection.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so in the beginning part of my program was like, I want you to feel confident that you could do the things that we're doing here if you had to. So the beginning part of my program was very PFS-ish, right? It was rat system. It was defang the snake. Like, I want to see you get good at that, right? We're going to get padded sticks. This guy's going to try and hit you. I just want you to smack the hand. If he hits you, you got to do 10 push-ups.
And you win either way, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this guy's going to put boxing gloves on. You're going to put a mouth guard in, and he's going to try and hit you, right? You got to be able to destroy it, right? You got to be able, right? And then along the way, what we would do is we would once that started to happen, and I could start to see, and I had a kind of a curriculum of how we did that. Then we would get into self perfection. And so then that was a lot of your Sombrada, Bicidario, things like that, Hubud, all of your, energy drills, things like that. Trapping started to come into play then, all of those things. But in the beginning, it was, can you basic kickbox? Do you understand the rat, essentially? And then with a stick or the knife, can you stay at long range and then enter when you needed to, and then understood what you needed to do when you entered? And that was just basically going back to some variation of headbutts, knees, and elbows, right? Or are you smacking the hand and hitting the head, right? Are you killing the snake? And so that's why, funny enough, my personal favorite Filipino martial arts system is Illustrissimo, because it is the most direct. It's the way that I envision it going down, so that, and when it comes to a context, if I had to train one thing for self-defense, now, if I had one thing to train and I wanted to just drink every possible thing, it would obviously be in Asano Kali. Sure. Right? Because you get all of those things. But if I had one thing to train for a self-defense reason, it would probably be a combination of what I've seen in Illustrissimo, and then just that defanging the snake principle from Paul. And so, but also what my intention for that was to help people to understand, oh yeah, this is what this thing is over here. And if I want to go down the rabbit hole of that thing, then I can go down the rabbit hole of that thing. But I understand the context of it, which is, a 47 count combination is probably not going to be what happens in a fight, right? I need to be able to get the job done quick. And then afterwards, we can play around with all those other things. Yeah.
The only way I can remember any of the counts that I can remember is that most of them are 4 counts that are interrupted.
Right.
So I get to do 3 things and he hits me back. And if I get lucky, I get to do 3 more things and then he's going to hit me back 3 times, right?
Right. Yeah. So, so that's, it was funny because when ecological dynamics first started coming to the gym, I was kind of resistant to it. But then what I started to see was I was terrible at mount defense until I had to spend rounds with, people where I had to get out from bottom. Right. And then sometimes it was constraint. All you need to do is, can you get the foot trapped? So you're in, quarter guard or quarter mount essentially, or 3/4 mount for the person on top. Sometimes it was can you get to can you elbow escape out? And then, I was terrible at it. And now my mount defense is pretty good. Conversely, I was terrible at mount. And most people are terrible at mount. And I'll tell you why you're terrible at mount. Because you don't understand the priority of what you're trying to do in mount. Even with a collar on, most of the time, you're not going to strangle the guy, right? You have to open up that collar more. You have to open up the arms to get to the strangle. Unless you're Hodrick Gracie, and if you're Hodrick Gracie, then you can strangle any fool on the planet, and it doesn't matter, But what the high percentage thing is what you see every level in jiu-jitsu. You separate the arms from the body. You get under the elbow. You do as Paulson calls them, trying to make him a unicorn, or get the elbow across the body. I'm not trying to strangle you unless I can get a cross collar from them. And it's a super high percentage. But when that doesn't happen, I need to be able to get you to basically be able to do this if I'm on top. Because when you're like this, you're not escaping mount any longer. You have to get your arms out. And there's a whole host of problems and mistakes that you're going to make along the way that are very predictable as me on top. On bottom, I don't want you inside my elbows. You can, by the way, you can come up and try and strangle me. I want you to, because I'm just going to tip you off. Right? But I understand the priority. My elbows need to be inside. I need to have good frames. And if I can do that, your attacks are pretty slim to none. And then you wind up making mistakes along the way that I can capitalize, and that's how I get out.
A lot of the mistakes and lost opportunity in jiu-jitsu feels like failure, right? But at the same time, I'm just thinking outside for mainly this one particular student, finding small wins.
Yep.
Right?
Oh,
with the RBLD Project, now I'm going to say it right. I apologize for that. Earlier I said RBLD Project.
Right.
But you actually had spoke about that a little.
Yeah, so I'm part of this executive business coaching group called Strategic Coach. And Dan Sullivan is a guy. About 4 years ago, there was a series of business books that kind of got really popular. Who Not How, Gap and Gain, 10X is easier than 2X. And those are books that Dan, I don't have any of his books. Oh, yeah, he would. Dan writes books like this. They're really thin.
Oh, I like it.
They're meant to be read on a 90-minute flight.
Oh, nice.
And for those of us super knuckle draggers, there's pictures. So, right? Because he wanted you to be able to absorb the material quickly. So there was a guy he met, and he said, "Hey, you write these little small books. Have you ever thought about writing a bigger book?" He goes, "Yeah, I don't write big books, but if somebody wanted to write a big book with me, I'd be fine." So this guy Benjamin Hardy wrote Gap and Gain based on Dan's small books. And one of the things that we do in Coach is we celebrate every week. Every week when I sit down and outline my week and what I want to get done, the first thing that I do is I celebrate wins to protect your confidence. Because in jiu-jitsu, just like in life and in business, in jiu-jitsu, man, oh man, in the beginning, it's terrible. It is, oh my God, I used to have anxiety driving to the gym as a white and blue belt. Because there's no lying in jiu-jitsu.
No, And a lot of times, well, I'm going to learn this technique, right? And if you come from the Kung Fu generation, you need one
Yep.
more technique, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then
Yep.
all of a sudden, in real time, all I'm doing is watching all of my techniques pass me by. Like I keep missing the intersection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
way I'm getting off, right? And there's a
Yep.
sudden stop at the end.
Yep. Yeah. And like a couple of weeks ago, I was training with a purple belt, and my job was to maintain top position, which means mount, side control, or back control, or submit him. Those were the constraints. His job was to get to a neutral position. It was no gi, so we qualify neutral position either standing, separated, or seated butterfly guard. And now, I don't leave mount. I don't do it. If you make me leave mount, you've earned that. So we're going along, and he made me leave mount. I said, we're going to switch. He's like, why? I said, because you won that. He goes, what do you mean? I said, in my brain, I don't ever want to leave mount unless I decide I'm going to leave mount. But if I've decided that I'm going to stay on top, I'm going to stay on top. And if you make me leave, you've won that position, right? And so, but I also talk about that with some of the blue belts. I'm like, bro, you lasted X amount of time and I didn't submit you. That's a win, right? Mm-hmm. So like a couple of weeks ago, I got to train with jiu-jitsu with one of our professional fighters, one of you guys that are in the UFC. And he submitted me one time in 8 minutes. And John used to submit me a million times with freaking Kimuras and Darces.
Wow.
Right? Mm-hmm. Now, if we were fighting, John would maul me. Like, no, I'm not lying to anybody about that. But he only submitted me one time when he used to submit me all the time. That's a win. I don't care.
That's so important, though, Shawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. The quit rate in jiu-jitsu especially, right? And it's hard. Yeah. It's hard sometimes, right?
So I think the quit rate is so high because in the beginning, the failure is so high. But a lot of that is training methodology. And, I've drank the ecological Kool-Aid, so I'm going to just, again, vomit ecological Kool-Aid.
Okay, well, hold on.
But
and this, I really like, and for us, we like experience over opinions.
Yes.
I'm not here for the opinion part, right? I got you. Right. I didn't even know we're going to talk about this. So I'm here for experience, brother.
Yeah. So the reason why people get hurt so much in jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, is that in the beginning, you take an hour class, it's 45 minutes of drilling, static drilling with no resistance. And then you go to do that thing in those 3 5-minute rounds where everybody is fighting like a tiger because everybody's trying to survive. If I put you in, like oftentimes in my foundations class, I will take guys and I will put them arm fully extended jujutami or armbar. And I'll say, your job is to hold it. You can't submit your partner. Your partner's job is to get their elbow out. And so what that does is that teaches the guy that has the armbar, oh, I can hold this, and here's how I can hold it. And they start to learn the routes of how the elbow is going to come out. And then they become so much more confident in the armbar that they don't have to rush to the submission. And then what we do is we say, okay, now we've had a round where this guy just holds it and this guy's trying to get his elbow out. Hopefully you've had the ability to get your elbow out. Next round, we'll count for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. But in those 3 seconds, that guy's trying to get his elbow out. You don't get to submit him until after 3 seconds, right? And then we'll go, you have the arm, elbow here, wrist here, and now my job is to submit you. Your job is to get your elbow out.
Mm.
And then now your partner's got this. Your job is to submit them. Now their job is just to get out, right? And so we'll go from that long range escape to shorter range escapes or last chance escape, essentially, to more concrete escapes. The more you do that, the less you have to go fast. The less we go fast, the less I get injured. But you can't drill that in a static drill. You don't get that confidence from there, right? But one of my favorite jiu-jitsu matches of all time, it's specifically for this thing, is Gordon Ryan versus Matthias Deniz. Gordon gets an inside heel hook, puts it on a little bit, looks at the ref, looks at Matthias, looks at the ref, looks at Matthias. Like, do I need to go any farther with this? Now, I've been to a Gordon Ryan seminar. I've had him put a heel hook on me. That is the tightest thing I've ever felt in my life. But he had enough control and confidence that he knew that this match was checkmate, right? So in the beginning, when you're training, it's hard enough to just show up and survive training. But when you're going through all these drills, and now we have 15 minutes of savagery, each other's trying to kill each other, and no context of actually what it feels like to do the thing, and your success rate is very, very low, then injuries happen. Your morale and your confidence gets beaten into the ground with a baseball bat. But if you're able to start to play more games and through the class, so like we do games, and then we do in a 60-minute class, in the classes I go to still, that I train in, not that I teach, but I train in. It's about somewhere between 50 to 55 minutes of constraint-based games. And then the last 5 minutes, it's a go. So now you're getting all of these pieces, but you have the ability to put it together at the end of class. On Saturdays, it's an hour and a half class, and it's probably 60 minutes of games and 30 minutes of go. So I think it's a lot easier for us. And also it's fun because week to week, you can actually feel yourself getting better in the restraint, in that live resistance.
Mr. Kitzman, would you come back and talk to us again, and maybe we could just talk specifically about this ecological approach? Would you like that?
Yeah, for sure. I'll do a little bit more brush up on terminology and all the rest of those things as well. So, I can talk a little bit more technical with it too, but for sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to record. This is for me, right? I think other people will get something out of it. It doesn't have to be technical.
Sure.
You are going to be spending time with your lovely wife for an anniversary, so don't worry about the brushing up part. Sometimes for me, and I don't know, it's in the back of my head, I really feel like at the end of our AIM program, AIM class, if I can take the movements that we did from Kali and emphasize the JKD body mechanic and tie it together at the end, that is my best class. And it doesn't happen all the time, brother, but that's when I heard that, because when it happens, I know, and I see the growth in the hour, and I see how they're leaving in that hour. And
so that was the magic of Paul. So if you look at specifically, if you look at the Golden Goose, that training methodology has the Golden Goose. That's how he did. He tried to do that. He tried to put it together like that.
Well, if he can't do it, I probably can't. So, but I just
but what we would do is we would go, we start out. We both have sticks, we'll say, and we're trying to defang the snake, right? And maybe we're trying to hit each other, right? And maybe you could even put tasks in there as well, right? Like, in the beginning, it's just hitting the hand as much as you possibly can, right? And then it's, can you hit the hand and can you hit the shoulder?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hit the hand? Can you hit the leg? Right. And then maybe it's, can you hit the hand and then enter and tie up? Right. And then what, you go along this thing, and then all of a sudden you go, red, whatever it is, drop the stick. Now you have empty hands, and now this guy still has a stick. And so now, and then you could put constraints within that as well, right? So now you got to get inside and tie the guy up if you got no stick, right? You're going to take a couple. Don't take any on the head, right? If you take one on the head, you got to do 10 burpees, something, right? And then it might be okay. Now both of you guys are doing, and then you could play that game and put it together like that. That was when I went out and trained with him. That was especially like when I went out in 2007 or 2008, he just had a day where that's what that was the theme. He had that, as Paul would say, I had that hair up my ass, and, that's what he did that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those were super fun. Those were super fun classes, and I felt like we were getting a lot of, that ability to kind of blend the arts that way.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So if you could give advice to a new martial arts student, okay, or in this case, 1.5 martial or a 2-year martial arts student who's struggling to see gains in things, and quite honestly, sometimes they feel as if they're just watching the techniques pass them by. Not that they said that, but I remember feeling that a lot, and now I do. Now less of them slip by, but most of them still slip by.
Yep.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody to stay in the game and notice their wins, or what kind of advice jiu-jitsu? First day.
First, here's what I tell
them. Second year.
Yeah, well, first in my foundations class, I repeat this all the time. The first time that you train against live resistance, jiu-jitsu doesn't get any easier than that. It doesn't. Jiu-jitsu never gets easier. It's always that hard. When you're with someone that is your size, your weight, your age, your skill level, it's always that hard. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that the next 3 to 4 years aren't going to suck a lot, because they will. Because there's people that have more experience than you do. Now, here's when jiu-jitsu gets easier. When the age, skill, size, and weight, when we take those 4 components in there and we start to take them away, right? Particularly the skill part. Then it gets easier. But that only happens when you've been training for a second. And so also, as an adult, martial arts will always be there for you. So you're going to go through a period of time in your life where, through health, relationship, job, whatever it is, you're going to have to stop training if you train for more than 5 minutes, right? Martial arts will always be there for you. And I also tell people, find one person in class in the beginning and commit to the fact that if you show up, you're helping them out. So on the days that you don't want to train, you're letting down Frank or Joe or Sally or whoever it is, right? And now that person doesn't even ever have to know that, right? But I'm committing myself because I'm showing up for that person.
Maybe don't
even
Because
here's what I know. Yeah, you don't even ever need to tell them. Here's what I know. You don't get training. You don't get better training if you don't have anybody around you.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that you can't work on certain things, but actual improvement, meaning that you can execute requisite skills with live resistance, doesn't happen by shadow boxing.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have somebody in front of you, particularly in jiu-jitsu, but I think in other things as well.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the successful pieces of JKD Kali and different things when it came out. Was one of the first arts that, not first arts or whatever, but a lot of us were under the impression we needed to learn form so we knew how to act.
Yep.
And
Yep.
immediately the JKD family was like, well, that's great. We'll do that later.
Right.
Go grab
Yeah.
Billy and let's get in here and do crazy kid stuff and figure out how it works and start with the techniques with a partner, you know.
Yep.
That's what I meant. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on, Jamie. It was great.
Brother, it was an honor and it was fun, and I hope we do it again.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call Andy Tunstall and tell him that there's one more thing now that at 50 years old I know that he can do that is just phenomenal. And I dazzled you with one more of his skills.
Yeah, for sure.
Jamie Sparling from Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin, a FormABLE podcast with Mr. Shawn Kitzman, the Rebuild Project. Okay, and if you're wondering what he's going to rebuild, it's you. Contact him and let us know how it goes. I think he's here to help a lot of people, and all we need to do is reach out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.